Lee Taeho stared at the massive field of twisted metal floating in the darkness of space. His small salvage ship Baekdu moved slowly through the wreckage, its lights cutting through the black void. Broken pieces of what had once been beautiful ships drifted past his window like dead leaves in a storm. "Captain, I'm reading at least 12 different ship signatures in this mess," said Park Min-soo from his seat at the scanner station. The young medic's fingers danced across the control panel, his face lit by the green glow of the displays. "These aren't just any ships either. The metal composition is strange. Very advanced." Kim So-ra looked up from her communication equipment, her dark eyes wide with concern. "I'm picking up distress signals, but they're not human. The language patterns are completely alien. Wait." She pressed her headphones closer to her ears and frowned. "One of the signals is much stronger than the others. It's coming from that large piece of wreckage at 2 o'clock. Taeho turned his ship toward the source of the signal. As they got closer, the wreckage revealed itself to be much larger than he had first thought. What he had taken for a piece of debris was actually the broken remains of a massive ship. Its hull was like nothing he had ever seen before. Instead of the gray metal humans used, this ship seemed to be made of something that glowed with a soft blue light, even in death. "My God," whispered Park Min-soo. "Look at the size of that thing. It must have been at least a kilometer long before it was destroyed." The ship had been torn in half by some terrible force. One section drifted slowly in space while the other had been completely destroyed, leaving only small fragments. The remaining section still had some power, as evidenced by the weak lights that flickered along its hull like a dying heartbeat. "Captain, that distress signal is definitely coming from inside," So-ra reported. "And there's something else. I'm detecting life signs, faint but definitely there." Taeho had been a salvage captain for 10 years, ever since he left the military. He had seen many wrecks and pulled valuable materials from countless dead ships, but he had never encountered anything like this. The design of the alien vessel was beautiful even in its destroyed state. Flowing curves and organic shapes suggested a completely different approach to space travel. "Are we sure it's safe to approach?" asked Park Min-soo. "We don't know what destroyed these ships. Whatever it was might still be out there." Taeho checked his long-range scanners. The space around them was empty except for the wreckage. "I don't see any other ships in the area. Whatever happened here is long over." He paused, studying the alien vessel more carefully. "But that life sign worries me. If someone is still alive in there, they won't be for much longer." The Baekdu was not a rescue ship. It was designed for salvage work, with heavy cutting equipment and cargo holds for scrap metal. Taeho and his crew made their living by stripping valuable materials from dead spacecraft and selling them at space stations. They were not equipped to help survivors, especially alien ones. But Taeho had been a soldier before he became a salvager. The military had taught him that you never leave someone behind, human or otherwise. The idea of flying away while someone died slowly in the wreckage went against everything he believed in. "Min-soo, get the emergency medical kit ready," he ordered. "So-ra, see if you can establish communication with whoever is in there. Even if we can't understand their language, maybe we can let them know help is coming." "Captain, are you sure about this?" Park Min-soo asked quietly. "We don't know anything about these aliens. They could be hostile. They could be dangerous." Taeho looked at his young crew member with understanding. Min-soo was right to be cautious. In the 10 years since humans had reached the stars, they had encountered many alien species. Some were friendly, others were neutral, and a few were openly hostile. First contact situations were always risky. "Look at that ship, Min-soo," Taeho said softly. "Look at the way it's designed. The curves, the organic shapes, the gentle lighting. Does that look like it was built by warriors? This was a peaceful vessel, probably a transport or maybe even a diplomatic ship." Kim So-ra suddenly straightened in her chair. "Captain, I'm getting a response to my transmission. It's weak, but I can make out some words. The alien is speaking Standard, though not very well." Standard was the common trade language used by most spacefaring species. While each race had their own native tongue, Standard allowed for basic communication across species barriers. "Put it on speaker," Taeho ordered. The bridge filled with a weak, trembling voice. The alien pronunciation was strange, with musical tones that human vocal cords could never reproduce, but the words were clear enough to understand. "Please. Help. Trapped. Dying slowly. Raiders came. No warning. Diplomatic mission peaceful." The voice faded into static. So-ra worked frantically to clear up the signal, but it was too weak to maintain. "Diplomatic mission. Teho repeated grimly. I knew it. This was a peaceful convoy that got attacked. He stood up from his captain's chair and moved toward the airlock. Minsu, get your medical gear. Sora, keep trying to maintain communication. We're going over there. Captain, wait, Park Minsu protested. Even if they are peaceful, we don't know anything about alien biology. I might not be able to help them even if I wanted to. We'll figure it out, Teho replied firmly. I'm not leaving someone to die in that wreckage, whether they're human or alien. As the Baekdu moved closer to the destroyed alien ship, Teho could see the extent of the damage more clearly. Massive holes had been torn in the hull by weapons fire. The attack had been brutal and thorough, designed not just to destroy the ships but to ensure no survivors. But somehow, someone had lived through it all. Someone was still fighting to stay alive in the ruins of their beautiful ship, calling out in a language learned from human traders, hoping that someone would hear and care enough to help. Teho had made his decision. Whatever the risks, whatever the consequences, he was going to try to save that life. It was simply the right thing to do. The small human salvage ship docked with the alien wreckage, and Lee Teho stepped into the unknown, carrying nothing but hope and a determination to help a stranger among the stars. The interior of the alien ship was like walking through a dream. The walls curved in smooth, organic shapes that seemed to flow rather than being built. Even damaged and powerless, the ship maintained an otherworldly beauty that took Teho's breath away. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows as he and Park Minsu made their way through the twisted corridors. The life signs are coming from this direction, Minsu said, checking his portable scanner. About 50 meters ahead, but the passage is blocked by debris. They had been searching for 20 minutes, following the weak distress signal deeper into the wreckage. The alien ship's layout made no sense to human minds. Corridors curved and branched in patterns that seemed random, and many rooms served purposes they could not guess. Here, Teho said, stopping at a section where the ceiling had partially collapsed. The signal is strongest on the other side of this blockage. The two men began moving pieces of twisted metal and strange crystalline materials that had fallen from the damaged walls. The work was slow and dangerous. Without knowing the ship's construction, they risked bringing down more debris with every piece they moved. Captain, came Kim Sora's voice through their communicators. I'm picking up movement on the long-range scanners. 3 ships approaching fast. They don't look friendly. Teho paused in his work. How long until they reach us? Maybe 20 minutes at their current speed. The ships are big, Captain. Much bigger than us, Teho and Minsu exchanged looks. 20 minutes was not much time to find the survivor, get them back to their ship and escape. But they had come too far to give up now. Keep working, Teho said. We'll make it. They cleared enough debris to create a small opening. Teho squeezed through first, his flashlight cutting through the darkness of the chamber beyond. What he saw made him stop and wonder. The alien survivor was unlike anything he had ever imagined. She was tall and graceful, with 4 slender arms and skin that shimmered with a soft blue light. Her head was elongated with large eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. Even injured and trapped, she possessed a dignity that marked her as someone important. Heavy metal beams had fallen across her lower body, pinning her to the floor. Blue liquid that must have been blood pooled around her injuries. But her eyes were alert and intelligent, and when she saw Teho, she tried to speak. Human, she whispered in her musical voice. You came. Did not think anyone would risk. We're here to help, Teho said gently. He gestured for Minsu to join him. My friend is a doctor. We're going to get you out of here. Park Minsu squeezed through the opening and immediately began examining the trapped alien. His medical training took over despite the strangeness of the situation. The beams are too heavy for us to lift normally, he reported. But if we can use the cutting torch from our ship. No time, Teho replied. Sora, what's the status on those approaching ships? 15 minutes in closing. I'm trying to get a better look at them, but their configuration doesn't match anything in our databases. Captain, I think these might be the ones who attacked the convoy. The alien queen's eyes widened with fear. Vorthak, she breathed. They are Vorthak. They will kill you if they find you here. You must leave. Save yourselves. Not without you, Teho said firmly. He began examining the fallen beams more carefully. Minsu helped me figure out how to move these things. Meanwhile, on board the massive Vorthak warship Bloodfang, General Koltar watched the small human salvage vessel with growing annoyance. The Vorthak were a proud warrior species, tall and powerful with dark scales and red eyes that glowed like burning coals. They had been the dominant military force in this sector of space for over 200 years. "General, the human ship has docked with the Cytherian wreckage," reported one of his officers. "Should we destroy them immediately?" Koltar studied the readings on his display screen. The human ship was tiny compared to his fleet, barely worth noticing under normal circumstances. But these humans had arrived at a very inconvenient time. "No," he said slowly. "Let them explore the wreck first. If they find Queen Velnara alive, it will save us the trouble of searching for her body. Then we can destroy them altogether." In the prison section of the Bloodfang, King Dexmore pressed his face against the energy barrier of his cell. Like his mate, he was a Cytherian, with the same graceful build and luminescent blue skin. But where Queen Velnara possessed a regal bearing, Dexmore radiated barely contained fury at his helplessness. Through the viewport of his cell, he could see the wreckage of their diplomatic convoy floating in space. The Vorthak had attacked without warning during what was supposed to be a peaceful mission. The convoy had been carrying gifts and treaties, hoping to establish better relations with the outer worlds. Now Dexmore watched in amazement as a small alien ship attempted what appeared to be a rescue mission. No species in the galaxy was foolish enough to challenge Vorthak authority. Yet these unknown beings were risking their lives for strangers. "Humans," he whispered, recognizing the ship's design from intelligence reports, the newest species to reach the stars, and already gaining a reputation for unpredictable behavior. Back in the wreckage, Teho had an idea. "Minsu, help me position the cutting torch. We're not going to try to lift the beams. We're going to cut them into smaller pieces." "That will take too long," Minsu protested, "and the heat might injure her further." "Trust me," Teho replied. He had noticed something about the way the beams had fallen. They were not actually holding up any critical structure. If cut carefully, they could be removed piece by piece without bringing down more debris. The work was delicate and dangerous. The cutting torch produced intense heat in the confined space, and they had to be extremely careful not to harm their alien patient. Queen Velnara remained conscious throughout the process, occasionally giving soft directions in her musical language. "Captain," came Sora's urgent voice. 10 minutes. The lead ship is powering up its weapons." "Almost there," Teho replied, sweat pouring down his face as he worked. The final beam was nearly cut through. With a grinding crack, the last piece of debris fell away. Queen Velnara was free, though badly injured. Minsu immediately began treating her wounds with supplies from his medical kit. Human medicine was not designed for alien physiology, but basic first aid principles seemed to apply. "Can you walk?" Teho asked. "With help," she replied weakly. "But you must understand. I'm Queen Velnara of the Cytherian Empire. If the Vorthak capture me alive, they will use me to force my people into slavery. You have risked much for a stranger." "That's what we do," Teho said simply. "Now let's get you out of here." Supporting the injured queen between them, Teho and Minsu made their way back through the damaged corridors. Every step was painful for her, but she endured without complaint. Behind them, the alien ship groaned and shifted as more sections began to fail. They reached their own ship just as Kim Sora announced that the Vorthak vessels were only 5 minutes away. Queen Velnara was settled into the medical bay while Teho rushed to the bridge. "Undock us and prepare for emergency acceleration," he ordered. "We're leaving now." "Captain," Sora said nervously, "those Vorthak ships are huge. Our weapons wouldn't even scratch their paint." Teho smiled grimly as he took control of his ship. "Who said anything about fighting? We're running, and we're going to run faster and smarter than they can follow." The Bekdu detached from the alien wreck, just as the first Vorthak weapon beams lanced through space where they had been moments before. The chase was about to begin. The Bekdu raced through space as fast as its engines could push it. Behind them, 3 massive Vorthak warships gave chase, their dark hulls bristling with weapons. Teho gripped the controls tightly, pushing his small salvage vessel beyond its normal limits. "How are we doing on power?" he called to Park Minsu, who was monitoring the engine readings while also keeping an eye on their alien passenger. "Engines are running at 110%, Minsu replied. "I don't know how much longer we can maintain this speed." In the medical bay, Queen Velnara lay on the narrow bed, her blue skin pale from blood loss and pain. Despite her injuries, she remained alert and aware of their situation. "Captain Lee," she called weakly, "you must understand what you have done. The Vorthak will never stop hunting you now. Kim Sora looked up from her communications station with worry. She's right, Captain. I'm monitoring their transmissions. They've put out a galaxy-wide alert. Every Vorthak ship and their allies are looking for us. The bounty on our heads is enormous. Tejo kept his eyes on the navigation display, searching for options. The nearest human space station was 3 days away at normal speed. Even if they could maintain their current pace, which was doubtful, the Vorthak ships were faster and would catch up within hours. What makes you so important to them? He asked Queen Velnara. The alien queen was quiet for a moment before answering. My people, the Catherians, control several key trade routes in this sector. For 2 centuries, we have remained neutral in galactic conflicts, trading with all sides. The Vorthak want to change that. They want to force us to join their empire. And you refused, Tejo said, understanding. We value our freedom above all else. My mate King Dexmore and I were traveling to the outer worlds to form new alliances. We hoped to find friends who would help us resist Vorthak expansion. Her voice grew sadder. Instead, we flew into a trap. Park Min-soo finished treating her immediate injuries and joined Tejo on the bridge. The medical equipment is helping, but she needs proper treatment soon. Some of her internal organs are damaged in ways I don't fully understand. On the bridge of the Bloodfang, General Koltar studied the pursuit with growing irritation. The human ship was small and fast, but it should not be able to outrun his powerful warships. Yet somehow it stayed just ahead of his weapons range. Increase power to engines, he ordered. I want that ship destroyed within the hour. General, said his tactical officer, our engines are already at maximum. The human ship appears to be running beyond safe limits. Perhaps we should wait for them to suffer engine failure. Koltar's red eyes glowed brighter with anger. No, I want them dead now. They have insulted Vorthak authority by interfering in our operation. In his cell, King Dexmore watched the chase unfold through his viewport. He had never seen anything like it. The small human vessel moved through space with an agility that defied its simple design. It changed course constantly, using asteroid fields and debris clouds to break up targeting solutions. More importantly, these humans were risking their lives for his mate, a complete stranger from an alien species. In all his years as a diplomat, he had never encountered such behavior. Most civilized species were cautious about interfering in conflicts that did not concern them. But these humans seemed to operate by different rules entirely. Back on the Baekdu, alarms began sounding as the engines started to overheat. Tejo was forced to reduce power, allowing the Vorthak ships to gain ground. They're closing fast, Kim Sora reported. 2 minutes until they're in weapon range. Tejo's mind raced through their options. They could not outrun their pursuers much longer, and they had no chance in a direct fight. But years of salvage work had taught him to think creatively about seemingly impossible problems. Sora, scan the area ahead of us. Look for anything we can use. Old battlefields, asteroid belts, anything with lots of debris. There, she said, pointing to a section on the navigation display. The Kalos system. Intelligence reports say there was a major battle there about 50 years ago. The wreckage field extends across most of the outer system. Perfect. Plot a course. Queen Velnara struggled to sit up despite her injuries. Captain, what are you planning? Something stupid and dangerous, Tejo replied with a grim smile. Exactly the kind of thing humans are known for. The Baekdu changed course toward the Kalos system, with the Vorthak ships following close behind. As they approached the edge of the debris field, the full scope of the ancient battle became clear. Thousands of destroyed ships from a dozen different species floated in the darkness, their hulls torn open by weapons fire from decades past. It's like a graveyard, Park Min-soo whispered. Tejo guided his ship into the maze of wreckage. The debris was thick enough to block sensor readings and provide cover, but it also created new dangers. Pieces of twisted metal drifted unpredictably, and any collision at their current speed would be fatal. The Vorthak ships are slowing down, Kim Sora reported. They're being more cautious about entering the debris field. Good. That gives us an advantage. Tejo's hands moved expertly over the controls, threading his ship between floating pieces of ancient warships. Years of salvage work had given him skills that few other pilots possessed. General Koltar cursed as his ships were forced to reduce speed. The debris field was too dense for his large vessels to navigate safely at high speed. Send out fighters, he ordered. Small craft can follow them through that junk. Dozens of Vorthak fighter ships launched from the warships and streaked into the debris field. They were faster and more maneuverable than the Bektu, but they also had to be careful not to crash into the floating wreckage. "Fighters incoming," Sora announced. 12 of them, spreading out to surround us. The chase became a deadly game of hide-and-seek among the ancient battleground. Tejo used his knowledge of salvage operations to predict how debris would move and shift, finding paths through the wreckage that the Vorthak pilots could not follow. But the enemy had numbers on their side. Every time the Bektu emerged from cover, weapon fire forced it back into hiding. The Vorthak fighters were slowly boxing them in, cutting off escape routes one by one. "We can't keep this up much longer," Park Minsu said, monitoring their power levels. "The engines are overheating again." Queen Velnara had been watching the pursuit with growing amazement. "Captain, I have never seen piloting like this." "You move through space as if you were born to it." "Humans are good at adapting," Tejo replied, avoiding a burst of energy fire from a Vorthak fighter. "We learn fast and we don't give up. I am beginning to understand why the galaxy speaks of your species with such interest," she said softly. The situation was becoming desperate. The Bektu was trapped in the center of the debris field with enemy fighters on all sides. Tejo's options were running out and his ship's engines were near the breaking point. But he had one more idea. It was incredibly dangerous, possibly suicidal, but it might be their only chance. "Sora, can you identify the largest piece of wreckage in this field?" She consulted her sensors. "There's a massive dreadnought about 10 kilometers from here. It's been gutted, but the hull is mostly intact. Plot a course." "We're going inside it." "Inside?" Park Minsu asked incredulously. "The hull breach is big enough for our ship to fit through. Once we're inside, we'll be completely hidden from their sensors. They won't be able to find us in there." It was a desperate gambit, but Queen Velnara smiled despite her pain. These humans were unlike any species she had ever encountered. Where others might surrender or try to negotiate, they continued fighting with creative solutions that bordered on madness. The Bektu raced toward the ancient dreadnought while Vorthak fighters closed in from all sides. Everything depended on reaching safety before the enemy could destroy them. The Bektu slipped through the massive hole in the ancient dreadnought's hull, just as Vorthak energy beams lit up the space behind them. Inside the dead ship, darkness swallowed them completely. Tejo cut the engines and activated silent running mode, making his vessel nearly invisible to outside sensors. "Are they following us?" he whispered to Kim So-ra. She listened carefully to her equipment. "I don't think so. They're circling the wreck, but they haven't entered. Maybe they're afraid the structure is unstable." The interior of the old warship was like a metal tomb. Emergency lighting from the Bektu revealed corridors that had been torn apart by weapons fire decades ago. Debris floated in zero gravity, creating an eerie landscape of twisted metal and broken dreams. "How long can we stay hidden here?" asked Park Minsu. Before Tejo could answer, Queen Velnara spoke from the medical bay. "Captain, I must tell you something important. My mate King Dexmore is alive. The Vorthak are holding him prisoner on their command ship." Tejo turned to look at her in surprise. "How do you know?" "Before our convoy was attacked, we established a mental link. It is something only mated Kytherians can do. I can feel his presence, sense his emotions. He is alive but imprisoned." Her large eyes filled with sadness. "He knows I escaped. He can feel my hope through our bond." Kim So-ra looked up from her station. "If he's on their command ship, that's the big one. The Bloodfang. I've been monitoring their communications. It's General Kultar's personal vessel. The Butcher of Andros Prime," Queen Velnara said with hatred in her voice. "He destroyed an entire peaceful colony just to prove Vorthak power. Now he holds my mate prisoner, probably hoping to use him against me." Tejo was quiet for a long moment, thinking. The smart thing to do would be to wait for the Vorthak ships to leave, then make their escape. They had already accomplished the impossible by rescuing the Queen. No one would expect them to attempt an even more dangerous mission. But as he looked at Queen Velnara's face, he saw the same expression he had seen in mirrors after losing comrades in battle, the look of someone who had left part of their soul behind. "Minsu," he said finally, "how is our patient? Can she travel?" "She's stable, but she needs proper medical attention soon. Her injuries are more serious than I can treat with our basic equipment." "That's not what I meant. I meant, is she well enough to fight?" Queen Velnara sat up straighter, her forearms moving with sudden energy. "What are you thinking, Captain?" "I'm thinking that we've come this far. We've already made enemies of the most powerful military force in this sector. And I'm thinking that no one should have to live knowing they left their family behind. Park Min-soo stared at his captain. You want to rescue the king too? From a Vorthak battleship? Taeho, that's not just dangerous, it's suicide. Maybe, but it's the right thing to do. Taeho began studying the layout of the debris field on his navigation screen. Besides, they won't expect it. Who would be crazy enough to attack a Vorthak command ship? Humans, Queen Velnara said softly, and there was wonder in her voice. Only humans would attempt something so impossible. Through their mental bond, she could feel King Dexmore's amazement as he watched the Vorthak search for the escaped rescue ship. The small human vessel had vanished completely, leaving the enemy forces confused and angry. On the bridge of the Bloodfang, General Koltar studied the tactical display with growing frustration. His fighters had searched every piece of wreckage in the immediate area, but the human ship seemed to have disappeared. Perhaps they were destroyed by debris, suggested his tactical officer. No, Koltar growled. I want to see their wreckage before I believe they're dead. These humans are proving more troublesome than expected. In his prison cell, King Dexmore felt a sudden surge of determination through his bond with Queen Velnara. Something had changed. She was no longer just trying to escape. She was planning something bold and dangerous. Back in the hidden dreadnought, Taeho was explaining his plan to his crew. The Bloodfang is big, but that makes it slow to maneuver. If we can get close enough fast enough, we can dock with them before their big guns can target us. And then what? Asked Kim So-ra. Even if we get on board, we're still talking about fighting our way through a ship full of Vorthak warriors. Queen Velnara smiled, showing sharp teeth that spoke of a predator heritage. Not all of us. My people may prefer peace, but we were warriors long before we became diplomats. Give me a weapon and I will show you how a Catherian fights when her mate is threatened. The ship's layout will be the biggest problem, Taeho continued. We don't know where they're holding the king and we don't have time to search the entire vessel. I can guide you, Queen Velnara said. Through our mental bond, I can sense his location. It will not be precise, but it will be enough. Park Min-soo shook his head in disbelief. This is insane. We're 3 humans and 1 injured alien against an entire Vorthak battleship. 4, corrected Queen Velnara. Once we free Dexmore, we will be 4. And you underestimate what determination can accomplish. Taeho began powering up the ship's systems. The element of surprise is our biggest advantage. They think we're hiding or running away. They won't expect us to attack. How do we even get close to them? Asked So-ra. We use the debris field. There are enough large pieces of wreckage to hide our approach if we're careful. Taeho brought up a tactical display showing the positions of the Vorthak ships. The Bloodfang is holding position at the edge of the field, while the smaller ships search for us. If we can navigate through the wreckage without being detected, we might be able to reach them. The plan was desperate, but it was the only chance they had. Queen Velnara armed herself with weapons from the Baekdu's emergency locker, her forearms handling multiple guns with deadly grace. Despite her injuries, she moved with the fluid precision of a born fighter. Your Majesty, Park Min-soo said as he checked her bandages one final time. Are you sure you're strong enough for this? My mate needs me, she replied simply. That makes me strong enough for anything. The Baekdu slipped out of its hiding place in the dead dreadnought and began its approach to the Bloodfang. Taeho flew with all the skill he possessed, using pieces of wreckage as cover while slowly closing the distance to the enemy command ship. On the Vorthak bridge, General Koltar was growing impatient. Call back the search fighters. If the humans are dead, we're wasting time. If they're hiding, they'll eventually have to come out for supplies. Yes, General, his officer replied. Should we return to base? No, we stay here and wait. I want to be sure. Koltar's red eyes glowed with malice. Besides, I have a prisoner who might provide entertainment while we wait. King Dexmore felt a chill of fear through his bond with Queen Velnara. Koltar was planning something terrible and they were running out of time. The Baekdu continued its stealthy approach, weaving between floating pieces of ancient battles. In the distance, the massive bulk of the Bloodfang grew larger, its dark hull studded with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Almost there, Taeho whispered. Everyone ready? His small crew prepared for what might be their final mission. They were about to attempt something that military experts would call impossible, a direct assault on a Vorthak command ship. But they were human, and humans had a reputation for achieving the impossible when it mattered most. The Bekdu attached itself to the Bloodfang's hull like a tiny parasite on a massive beast. Teho had managed to dock with the Vorthak ship's emergency airlock without triggering any alarms. But he knew their luck would not last long. Cutting through the outer door now, Park Minsu reported, working with a plasma torch. Their hull is thick, but our equipment can handle it. Queen Velnara stood ready beside him, armed with 2 energy weapons and a blade from her homeworld. Despite her injuries, she moved with deadly purpose. Dexmore is 3 levels down and toward the center of the ship, she said, her eyes closed in concentration. I can feel him more clearly now. Kim Sora monitored communications from her portable unit. Still no sign they've detected us. The fighters are returning from their search, but they're not in any hurry. The plasma torch finished its work and a section of the Vorthak hull fell inward with a dull clang. Beyond lay a maintenance corridor dimly lit by red emergency lighting. The air that flowed out smelled of metal and something else that made the humans wrinkle their noses in distaste. Vorthak scent markers, Queen Velnara explained. They mark their territory like animals. This corridor leads to the lower levels where they keep prisoners. Teho went first, his military training taking over. The corridor was built for beings larger than humans, with high ceilings and wide passages. Everything was constructed from dark metal that seemed to absorb light, giving the ship an oppressive atmosphere. They moved quickly but carefully, following Queen Velnara's guidance through the mental link she shared with her mate. The ship was enormous, a floating city designed for war and conquest. They passed armories filled with weapons, barracks housing sleeping warriors, and command centers monitoring dozens of star systems. The Vorthak Empire is larger than I imagined, Teho whispered as they paused at an intersection. They have conquered 47 star systems, Queen Velnara replied sadly. My people's neutrality has protected us so far, but General Koltar wants to change that. They reached a security checkpoint guarded by 2 Vorthak soldiers. The warriors were massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with dark scales and glowing red eyes. Their weapons looked capable of destroying small vehicles. I'll handle this, Queen Velnara said. Before anyone could stop her, she stepped into the open. The guards barely had time to register surprise before the Catherian queen struck. Her 4 arms moved in a blur of motion, weapons firing with deadly precision while her blade found gaps in their armor. The fight was over in seconds, leaving both Vorthak warriors dead. Reminded me never to make you angry, Park Minsu said with respect. You rescued me from certain death, she replied. I owe you a debt that can never be repaid. They descended deeper into the ship, following maintenance shafts and service corridors to avoid the main passages where more guards might be stationed. The mental link between the royal couple grew stronger with each level they descended. Close now, Queen Velnara whispered. Very close. The prison section was a maze of energy cells designed to hold beings from dozens of different species. Most were empty, but they passed several occupied cells containing aliens Teho did not recognize. Political prisoners, Queen Velnara explained. Leaders who opposed Vorthak expansion. Koltar collects them like trophies. At the center of the prison complex they found King Dexmore. He was held in a cell designed specifically for Catherians, with energy barriers that would be lethal to his species if touched. But when he saw his mate approaching, his luminescent skin brightened with joy. Velnara, you live. His musical voice carried notes of pure happiness. But how? And who are these brave souls who risk so much for strangers? Humans, she replied as Teho worked to disable the cell's locking mechanism. They are called humans, and they have shown me what true courage means. King Dexmore studied the 3 humans with wonder. I watched your escape from my cell window. No species in the galaxy would dare challenge Vorthak authority as you have done. We're not from this galaxy originally, Teho said as the cell door opened. Maybe that's why we think differently. The reunion between the Catherian royal couple was beautiful to witness. Their 4 arms intertwined in complex patterns while their skin pulsed with synchronized light. The mental bond between them was almost visible in the way they moved together. We must free the others, King Dexmore said, gesturing to the occupied cells. I cannot leave knowing they will suffer for my escape. Agreed, Teho said without hesitation. Sora, help me with these locking systems. They began opening cell after cell, freeing a dozen political prisoners from various worlds. Each alien they released stared at the humans with amazement, unable to believe that such a small group had successfully infiltrated a Vorthak command ship. But their rescue mission was interrupted by blaring alarms throughout the ship. Red lights flashed as automated voices announced the security breach in the Vorthak language. "They've found us," Park Min-soo said grimly. "The docking port where we entered," Kim So-ra reported, checking her scanner. "Vorthak security forces are converging on our ship." Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors as squads of Vorthak warriors rushed toward the prison section. The sound was like thunder, promising violence and death. "This way," King Dexmore said, taking the lead. "I have studied this ship during my imprisonment. There are escape pods 3 levels up. They fought their way through corridors now filled with enemy soldiers. The freed prisoners proved to be valuable allies, each species contributing unique abilities to the running battle. Queen Velnara and King Dexmore fought side by side, their combined skills making them nearly unstoppable. But it was the humans who impressed the aliens most. Taeho's tactical knowledge, gained from years of military service, turned their retreat into a masterclass of small unit combat. Park Min-soo treated wounded aliens while fighting, his medical training allowing him to keep everyone mobile. Kim So-ra coordinated their movements while maintaining communication and electronic warfare against Vorthak systems. "How do you fight so well together?" asked one of the freed prisoners, a crystalline being from the Andromeda sector. "You move like a single organism." "We trust each other," Taeho replied simply, covering their retreat with precise weapons fire. "That's what humans do." They reached the escape pod bay to find General Koltar waiting for them with a company of his best warriors. The Vorthak commander was even larger than his soldiers, with battle scars covering his dark scales and eyes that burned like stars. "So," he said in accented standard, "the famous humans who think they can challenge the Vorthak Empire. You have caused me considerable embarrassment." "Sorry about that," Taeho replied, raising his weapon. "But we're not done yet." The final battle was epic in scope. General Koltar himself fought like a force of nature, his massive weapons tearing apart metal bulkheads. But he had underestimated both human determination and the fighting spirit of the aliens they had freed. Queen Velnara and King Dexmore attacked in perfect coordination, their mental link allowing them to anticipate each other's moves. The other freed prisoners fought with the desperation of beings who had been given a second chance at freedom. And the humans fought with something that impressed even their enemies: an absolute refusal to abandon anyone under their protection. The turning point came when Taeho realized that General Koltar's armor had a weak point where the neck met the shoulder. It required a perfect shot at an impossible angle, but Park Min-soo provided the distraction while Kim So-ra disabled the general's shields. Taeho's shot found its mark, and the mighty General Koltar fell. With their leader defeated, the remaining Vorthak warriors lost heart. The escape pods launched just as Vorthak reinforcements arrived, carrying the rescued prisoners to safety among the debris field. Days later, news of the rescue spread throughout the galaxy. The story of 3 humans who had successfully assaulted a Vorthak command ship and freed political prisoners became legend. More importantly, it proved that the Vorthak Empire could be beaten. Queen Velnara and King Dexmore returned to their people as heroes, but they never forgot the debt they owed to humanity. The Catherian Empire became humanity's first major ally among the stars, providing technology and support for human expansion. Taeho continued his life as a salvage captain, but now alien species throughout the galaxy knew his name. The small human who had shown that courage and determination could overcome impossible odds had become a symbol of hope for oppressed peoples everywhere. And General Koltar, recovered from his wounds but stripped of his command, returned to the Vorthak homeworld with a warning that his superiors did not want to hear. Humanity was not just another species to be conquered. They were something new, something dangerous, something that fought not for territory or resources, but for principles that made them nearly invincible. The galaxy would never be the same.